There's a beautiful day headed your way. Keep your head up, you'll be okay. A beautiful day waiting for you. Just open your eyes, you'll see it's true. Good times, sunshine, gonna be here in no time now. Bad times, gray skies, push them all away, turn them upside down. You're gonna break new ground, turn everything around. You're gonna live your life. There's a beautiful day headed your way. Keep your head up, you'll be okay. Beautiful day waiting for you. Just open your eyes and see it's true. A beautiful day. Tick tock, don't stop. Every little thing, it'll be alright. Flip flop, just drop. Any negativity out of sight. You're gonna reach up high. You're gonna learn to fly. You're gonna live your life. You're gonna live your life. There's a beautiful day headed your way. Keep your head up, you'll be okay. Beautiful day waiting for you. Just open your eyes, you'll see it's true. A beautiful day. A beautiful day. Keep your head up. There's a beautiful day headed your way. Keep your head up, you'll be okay. Beautiful day waiting for you. Just open your eyes and see it's true. A beautiful day, 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 a beautiful
Welcome everyone to Science You've Had Me at Hello. My name is Melissa Rancourt and I'm the founder and board president of Greenlight for Girls, as well as an engineer, an entrepreneur, and an educator. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's episode. So this broadcast series is designed to help inspire the next generation in science. And how do we do that? By asking awe-inspiring individuals to share their stories. And the word that comes to mind when I think of our speakers today is Nourish. And you know why? Because the theme of this week in celebration of National Science Week's focus on food, different by design. So we're going to ask our speakers, how do they nourish their passion for science and technology in their career, plus a lot more. So this broadcast is brought to you by Greenlight for Girls, an international organization that works around the world to create hands-on STEM learning for everyone, with a particular focus to girls of all ages and backgrounds. And we're here today because of some very special organizations we love working with: National Science Week ACT, Girl Guides Australia, University of Canberra. There's more too, and more to come. But today we're here in our virtual studio audience, and we welcome all of you from around the world, with a special shout out to our team, Alex and Michelle, who are behind the scenes, but also to all of you, because we have you here in our studio audience, but we also have you here live across 5 platforms, and you might be listening to this even afterwards as we're recording this too. So today is all about you. So all of you joining are role models, those listening in, and to do so, we've invited on the stage 3 amazing speakers. In a moment, they're going to share their spark that inspired them in their STEM journey. And we're going to learn more about who they are and what they do. So take note, get ready to ask your questions. And guess what? It's my pleasure to bring onto the stage our 3 speakers. So I'm going to start with having Arabella Young if you can join us on the stage. There you are. Arabella is a student researcher for the Australian National University, having just graduated with a Bachelor of Science, with honors majoring in science communication, ecological, environmental biology. And as she describes it, she figures out whether people who aren't scientists understand science, and if they don't, she figures out how to fix that. Arabella, you are in the right place. Let me tell you, because it's what we do at Greenlight for Girls. And when she's not diving into all things STEM and education, you can find her running ultra marathons. I'm so impressed. Thank you, Arabella. Oh, so great. Let's bring on the next speaker, Alexandra McFayden. So Alexandra, hello. She's a recent grad from the University of Canberra studying biomedical science, and she loves to volunteer with Girl Guides in her free time, and lightweight camping is one of her favorite hobbies. Adventurous and detail-oriented, Alexandra is looking forward to her next role with the Australian Public Service soon. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Alexandra, for being here. All right, and next I want to bring on our third speaker, Thanuri Welaratne. So she's a science communicator from Canberra who's passionate about inspiring the next generation through informal education. Again, you're in the right place, Thanuri. With her background in ecology, administration, and relationship management, she currently holds the role as Cyber Ready Officer at Questacon. Love the title. The National Science and Technology Center. Her aim is to empower young people to feel confident and enthusiastic about science. Brilliant. I am so happy to have the three of you here. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you about that one moment of inspiration to get you where you are today, maybe where you're going next. But first, I want to mention this. So you heard the name of this broadcast, Science. You had me at hello. We love this name. It's just so much fun. You might recognize it because it's partly a quote from a movie. But the idea behind it is to share the moments that motivate us to do something, to be part of something bigger, to create, to come up with solutions for people or situations that need us. And a lot of people need us right now. And the word science to us means everything. We use that, but we mean it in its way, from the subject itself to the connection to STEM, to the idea of discovery, curiosity, and possibilities. So let's hear from our special speakers today, because I have a question to ask you. So that moment of spark, and if there is that kind of one moment you can connect to, or just in general of how you got here, when I think of that moment, that can happen at any point. It can happen when we're 3 years old. It can happen yesterday. It could be that we're still waiting for it, whatever. Arabella, tell us, what is that spark that got you here?
So I definitely think kind of the spark for me happened maybe a bit later than I had hoped. So it actually happened when I was probably in year 11, so like 16 or 17 years old. And I still am. I'm a huge fan of English. I've always actually been a big book reader, and I also really, really enjoyed science. I was really enjoying all my science courses, and I was thinking about university and what I wanted to do next, and I was so unsure what direction I could go in, where I might actually be able to kind of have that sense of belonging. And my aunt Emily, who's from Melbourne, she's actually at Deakin University, and she teaches psychology there. And I remember her saying to me, like, you really like people, you really like books, you really like science. Have you ever heard of science communication? And I was like, what is that? Like, what are you talking about? And she actually sent me a bunch of Twitter handles of all of these different science communicators, because there's a huge science communication community on Twitter. And she was like, go check out their stuff, because I really think this could be the area for you. And so I, made a Twitter account and went and looked at all these people's different tweets. And I was like, this work seems so cool. And it was just that perfect combination. And I think it was that moment of having someone else go, hey, like, these are the things you care about, and like, these are your skills. I see the potential in you to, to go and do something with that. And like, here's the area that I think you could really shine. That was kind of that big moment of inspiration for me, and feeling really seen, and like, I could really be capable to, have a really big impact.
Oh, Arabella, thank you for sharing that. There's so many great messages in there, but especially that main one, which is being lucky to have a person to see that in you, but then also to say, because sometimes we see it, obviously, we see it all the time, but to say it, sometimes we don't know to say it, how important it is. And
Yeah,
it's amazing how much one person can help to give just that light bulb of possibilities.
absolutely.
Lovely. Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention too is also the combination of interests. So sometimes, especially when we're growing up and going through school, and that can happen for a lot of reasons, it feels like we need to go in one direction, or that there's one direction meant for us. But you mentioned two things that sometimes people might think of it in two separate ways, and that science,
Absolutely.
right? So, but those, you can put things together and create paths, and sometimes the paths are already there. So it's just a means of finding them, which is lovely. So much. All right, Alexandra, tell us, moment of inspiration, moment of spark.
Yeah, no worries. So it's wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I think my moment of inspiration actually happened in year 11 as well, as it happens. My mum studied maths at uni, and so, science and STEM topics were always a big part of my childhood. But it wasn't until I came across my chemistry teacher in year 11, and we were doing an experiment replicating some atom thing. And what I realized in that activity was I loved the aspect of the discovery and the process of, challenging yourself to find out something new or explore something in a different way, even if you weren't sure what you were going to do. And I think it really sort of drew me to the scientific process, and seeing all the wonderful things that, we've got in our society from science, and how fantastic it is to use all those wonderful discoveries.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that's why I think it's also important to connect to the bigger concepts around science, like discovery and curiosity, and that could be said for anything. But this idea of learning and uncovering and figuring out solutions, and what if, and also being potentially on the forefront of creating something that helps somebody else, I think is great. Yeah, so thank you for that. I love the connection to discovery. And I think of also how relevant it is today, right? So we're depending on quite a lot of people to discover things that will help us at all times, but especially right now. So I think of scientists right now with that kind of superhero cape, going on. So it's good to be connected to all of that too. Thank you for sharing. Thanuri, tell me your spark inspiration.
Listening to both Arabella and Alexandra made me laugh, because my moment is also in year 11. And funnily enough, also with my chemistry teacher. So weird coincidence. But my moment was actually, I was failing my chemistry class, and I was really struggling with it. And my teacher took me aside one day, and she told me that, like, you clearly love science and you're really interested and curious in it. And her belief in me really inspired me to do better. And I think just the fact that having someone who took me aside and took the time to tell me that she believed in me and she thought I could do it, and that really inspired me to become a woman in STEM. I probably didn't feel like I could be a woman in STEM until that point. And I've always been curious about animals, and I also pursued ecology as well, Arabella. So weird coincidences, but yeah, I think having someone who wanted to encourage me and support me in that journey was a really big spark moment for me.
Oh, this is great. A lot of great messages there too. First, let's congratulate all the year 11 chemistry teachers around Australia, because hey, they've done well, huh? Because the three of you are here who didn't know each other before, and it's so funny to have that connection, and so great. It's wonderful to see, of course, and to also just emphasize the importance that teachers play in our lives, of course, with everything, but especially for that moment of inspiration. And I especially like, Thanuri, what you mentioned, which is when we're not succeeding. And that's also a tough thing to say, because that's according to however it's being measured, which we could go into a lot of things about that, right? So, but still to have someone see potential, which is what I love, because that's what makes a difference between going forward and giving up, right? So we need to always have that within ourselves, but it also, we need that from those that are around us, especially our role models like teachers. It's fantastic. Oh, I'd like to dive in more. Tell me about ecology, because this is something that, this is something that you're studying and so forth. Thanuri, tell me a little bit more about the work that you do.
Yeah, so I did a Bachelor of Science and I majored in ecology. And I investigated the arid zone of Western New South Wales, so the desert basically, and I worked with a lot of small mammals and small reptiles, and I looked at how larger animals impacted their population sizes. So I did a lot of work out there. And I really loved it. I love all animals. So it was really interesting to see how the relationship with larger animals impacted these animals that were a lot smaller than them. So yeah, I loved it.
Oh, this is great. And Arabella, you studied something similar. Tell us about this.
Yeah, so I'm still doing ecology work at university at the moment, but my kind of journey with ecology started in year 12. I actually did a kind of a mini paper in my final year of high school looking at the birds of the ACT. So I did a really in-depth analysis of kind of, the local birds in the ACT in present day, and then looking at records from up to 200 years ago of the birds that were previously in the Canberra region, and kind of comparing, is it more diverse now, and what does that actually mean, and how do these birds interact with our environment now versus how they did back then. So that was really, really cool work to be part of.
Oh, I love it. Especially, we get a chance to, we have a general interest. That's why we go to university and we get a chance to explore it. But to have a specific project or a moment that inspires us, that we go, oh, you know what, I'd like to do more here, or it's just been fun and this may go to something else. But especially when you get a chance to write on it, because this is something that then later on, you have no idea, you're going to be referring to this for many years. All these great things become such great moments we can go and reflect back to, but also we can utilize and help others with it. Thank you for sharing that. And Alexandra, biomedical science, tell us about this degree.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and it's not something I actually had heard about before I went to sign up for university and found it was one of the options. It's a lot about learning about the human body and how things interact. Not necessarily from a medical perspective, more from a scientific perspective. So that's learning about like cell types and different organs and how those interact together and what that means. Because a lot of the things that happen in the human body also happen in other animals as well. And so we can sort of learn about those similarities and compare them. It's been absolutely fascinating, and I think I've got more interested in it as I've gone along, as I've learned more. I never imagined everything that sort of falls under that umbrella when I first, started down that route.
I know, it's amazing. And I think about that with all three of your degrees, because they really kind of create this open door for exploration, because it's like that with a lot of things, but ecology, biomed science, all these things are, I'm sure it feels like sometimes when you're learning, you're like, oh, this is great. And then you learn something else. You're like, oh, and then like the world keeps widening, which is great. And then you can start to see connections between them, which is so much fun. I'd love to dive into even more with each of you. And I know that you've got some photos to share. So I'm going to talk to Alex in the behind the scenes. There they are. See, it's magical. And there are your photos. So Arabella, I'd like you to start first. Tell us about this photo and tell us about more about what you do.
So this photo is from after I had started kind of at university doing I also did a Bachelor of Science, same as Thanuri. And this is actually a sunrise. It's down at the Kyola coastline. Kyola is one of the campuses at the Australian National University. And the sun is rising, and it's a good friend of mine that's pictured in the photo. And we actually are on a field trip. So this was a pretty intense field course I did a couple years back, and we were looking at bug populations at the coast, and also kind of looking at how, as you get further away from the water, how the environment changes, whether that's temperature or the humidity or the kinds of bugs that you're seeing or the kinds of foliage. Are there lots of trees? Are there lots of shrubs? And kind of using that to plan for things, whether that might be considering how you might respond in a bushfire, or considering, okay, we've got these bugs here, does that mean that we have lots of frogs here as well? And so kind of that kind of work. And yeah, this photo is from this moment where me and my friend got up really early in the morning. Anyone who gets up on a regular basis to watch a sunrise, it's very early in the morning. And it was just this moment where I really felt like I was doing something I was passionate about, because it was just like such an incredible experience of being there for, a couple days, but also that I was surrounded by people who shared that passion. And that's why I kind of really thought it was important to have this photo with my friend in it, because we had this shared experience and this shared kind of time away, working so hard. You go out in the field during the day, you come back and you're typing up madly about what you've learned and making sure all your data's in the spreadsheets correctly so you can make graphs, all sorts of things. And just this moment of getting up in the morning and taking in that the beauty of the place we were in and the hard work that we were doing, and also just feeling like I was so connected to other people. That was definitely like a really incredible moment for me. And I think ever since that field course in particular, I just felt so certain and secure in knowing that I was in the right place, and there were other people that were there with me, that whether they took me places or I took them places, or we went in different directions, we're all kind of on that trip together, which was really exciting for me.
Thank you for sharing that. I think for me it's also about experiencing something, and that's what comes alive when you're talking about it too, because in the way you're sharing it, I feel like I was part of that. And it makes me also want to try to get up earlier to see the sunset.
It's no easy feat. I definitely got bullied into that one.
Some people do it very naturally. I'm in awe. But what I also think about too is the sensation of the senses, and also what that brings to life with what we're learning and the science around us, the feel of the beach on your feet, to walk into the water. I'm thinking about your friend there, and just capturing moments like this. And I think this is a great message we can also give to others, which is we need to experience things in order to be able to really understand them. And when you see it, when you're in it, it makes the stuff that you're learning that much more clear and relevant and inspiring, so that you can go back and do the writing that you need to write, which is brilliant. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Arabella. Look at this. Alexandra, tell us, what are we looking at?
No worries. Well, this is a picture representation of an atom. And although we can't actually take photos of atoms because they're so small, this is an artist's interpretation of what one might look like. Now, I picked this image because it's something that's really inspired me, which is focusing on those scientific discoveries that have come before us, and how our society is impacted by all the wonderful things that and the hard work people have done over the decades. And as we already touched on, I'm studying biomedical science. Now, when I first picked that degree, the pandemic wasn't in our sights. That was not something that society knew about. It wasn't something that was particularly relevant in everyday life. But as the pandemic took off, I was actually studying microbiology, genetics, and data analysis as my subjects that semester. And it became very relevant very quickly, when those are all things that we all as a society had to learn about, and had to learn what that curve meant on that graph, and how long lockdowns had to go for, or why that might be. And I think that this just sort of represents all of those incredible things that whether we talk about it every day or not, it is all so important.
Absolutely. It's a great connection to that, and it's amazing, like when you didn't see that going forward, but then you're suddenly in this degree where it becomes, you can really see the importance of what you're studying and why, which is a real positive that comes from it. Now tell me about this photo.
No worries. So this is a photo from me as a guide leader, so volunteering with Girl Guides. And what we do in Guides is we're really about teaching girls and inspiring them to try new things and have a go. And this particular photo was on Lake Ginninderra here in Canberra. And when girls go canoeing, they're always quite unsure to start with, because maybe they haven't done it before, or it does seem, can seem quite a bit of challenging. But after a little while and having everyone, you know, gently encouraging them and everything, we end up with all of the girls in the water, so much so that by the end of the day they don't want to leave. They'd like to keep doing it. And I think this photo was just showing all of the wonderful things that can come out of just having a go and trying something, even if you're not sure.
Oh, this is great. I love the work, of course, that Girl Guides is doing, and thank you for being part of that, and for all of you who volunteer for not only this but other things that also encourage, especially the young girls around you to do things. But I can just see it too. I'm like in the canoe. I'm like thinking about the actual getting into the canoe, and in my head, it's all right. Well, what if I fall? What if I this? What if this? And you know, those worries and having someone guide you through those worries, and then go at some point it switches to, oh, this is a lot of fun and I don't want it to stop. So I can just imagine it quickly turns to, you've got to get out of the boat sometime. Come on, you know, the end of the day. All right, thank you so much. Let's see the next photo. Oh my goodness, Thanuri, tell me, because I love it. I see this on the cover of a magazine. So what is this?
Yeah. So I took a short break from being a scientist, and last year I did a Master's of Science Communication Outreach. And as part of that degree, I did it at ANU, so the Australian National University, and I also got to do an internship with Questacon. So I got to teach science to kids around Australia, and just like Alexandra was saying, the pandemic really changed things for me. So I would have been going across regional and remote areas of Australia and doing science shows like this, showing people about fire and how it works. But I did a lot of online workshops actually, and I still work at Questacon. I'm in a different role now, and I still get to speak to students, and I really love what I do. It's a great job. Every day is different, and I work with some incredible people who are different types of scientists every single day. And it's been a source of inspiration for me because I gave it a go. I was terrified of public speaking before I did this degree, and now it's my job. So I love it.
Funny how that happens, right? Suddenly, you know, it's something that you're afraid of, and then suddenly it becomes your job, and then it's okay, you know.
Yeah.
All right, now tell me about this cute guy here.
Yeah, so this was actually during my honours. So when I was talking to you before about working in the arid zone, this is what I was doing. I was trapping animals, and this is a dunnet, which is a native mouse. It's a marsupial mouse, and it was one of the animals I got to interact with while I was doing my honours, and it's a source of inspiration for me, and I chose it because I still am really passionate about conservation and also environmental science, and it's still an area I'm really looking forward to exploring more. And it reminds me of a time when I was really curious about the world around me, and it keeps me motivated in my current job as well. So yeah.
Oh, great. And I love the connection between all three of you, with so many things. Science communication help. I mean, I don't know how many connections are there here. I do think it's very serendipitous. You know, the three of you who did not know each other, and I'm stopped counting the connections. But here too is another one, which is, you know, getting out and interacting with nature, with learning, with the inspiration it brings to oneself, with the connection to giving it to others. Poof, so much here. And thank you for sharing this. Thank you for sharing all these photos. It helps us to see a little bit more into your world, because your world is huge, and we get even little glimpse, and that little glimpse will help somebody else. In fact, I've got us somebody else to bring on stage. We love to do this as part of our broadcast. And here, I know we have our live studio audience in front of us. And we have, of course, the live people who are in all the platforms who we cannot see. But here in the studio, we have a special young woman. Her name is Phoebe Cook, and she's been one of our Greenlight for Girls Canberra participants in our previous events. Phoebe, are you there? Why don't you come to the stage and turn on your video?
Hi, my camera won't flip, so I'm stuck like this.
No worries. So Phoebe, I know you've got a question for everyone. Why don't you throw it out there? What do you have?
I actually have two questions. So after you have accomplished everything or what you're currently working towards, what do you plan to do next, and what else do you want to learn?
Good question. Who wants to take that one? Arabella, you want to take it?
Yeah, so the first one asking kind of like what we're doing next. So kind of at the end of last year, I got a paper published, which was really, really exciting. It was published in the Australian Journal of Public Administration. And I was basically looking at how the Australian government looks at scientific evidence and whether they actually take that evidence and apply it to policy, or whether they kind of ignore it, or kind of what that relationship is. And so as an extension of that work, next year I will be embarking on another kind of project looking at a pretty similar area. So I kind of want to get more data on that and take the work that I was doing a bit further and kind of build on that research, because I think it's really important. So a particular area of interest of mine is science and policy and that relationship, because I just think it's so important that, you know, the hard work that all of our scientists are doing, whether it's in, you know, health and relevant to COVID, or whether it's like Thanuri and they're out in the field looking at animals and, you know, looking at conservation, or, you know, if it's different to that. But really the important thing for that work is that people hear it and they understand it, which I'm sure everyone here totally agrees. But the next step from that is definitely that, you know, our governments and our leaders are using that work. So I'm really excited to keep on kind of keeping them to account, holding them to account, and making sure that they're reading all these incredible papers that people produce, and that they're listening to all of our scientists and actually putting that in policy. So that's kind of what I'm doing next.
Yeah, great. Yeah, as you said, there's so much research out there, and the real challenge is getting it out, getting it to the people who need to see it, getting it to the public. And that's the important role of science communication as well, because that's how you can get it out to lots of different audiences, knowing how to get it across. Thank you for this. Phoebe, love to see that you're on camera. Now that we can see you, can you ask your question again? And then we'll turn it to one of our other speakers.
Okay, so my second question, or the question I just asked,
because I have the second question, and then we can come back.
Okay. If you didn't choose what you were currently doing, what would you have done?
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, Alexandra, do you have an idea? And you can answer a little bit of the first one too. Go for it.
Okay, well, I'll start with what I would have done if I hadn't chose this. And interestingly enough, I think I would have done something in business. Because in a separate part of my life, I actually do have a part-time job, and it's at a small business. And I think that a lot of things that maybe I didn't know when I started, then as I, you know, worked more and, you know, had that part-time job after school and stuff, I learned more and more about it. And it's definitely something that I was interested in as well, although science did win out. But business, in a similar way to science, I think is applicable to a lot of areas of life. You know, although we use those skills in this certain way now, you can always apply them to new situations or different things. And, you know, that's such a valuable thing as we grow up and, you know, try different challenges.
Great, thank you. And Alexandra, how does that relate to because you talked about having the part-time job. So what's next for you?
Well, look, I'm reaching the end of my sort of studies at university for now. Not forever, but definitely for the next little while. So I'll be embarking on my first full-time job at the start of next year. Now I have, that brings its own challenges, of course. You know, it'll be in an office, it won't be in a shop, you know, all sorts of different things there. But I'm really looking forward to, you know, applying the skills I've learned, and even when it's the soft skills like writing and communication and things, and the sort of process of discovering or persevering through things when you're not sure and seeking clarification. All of those skills are so valuable, and I'll be able to apply those in my new job, whatever that may bring, even though at the moment I'm not actually quite sure what that is. But when I start my first day next year, I will certainly be very excited for that.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it can be tough when you don't know, but it's also this, you know, blank slate, possibilities, what's the next thing, and that can be so exciting to think about, like what is coming up next. So I wish you great success with that next opportunity that's going to jump to you. And Thanuri, tell us, you've got 2 questions you can pull from. You can grab one of them, combine them, whatever you want to do there.
Yeah, they were great questions, Phoebe. Thank you so much for asking it. I think the thing with being a scientist is that you're always curious. So I feel like there's always something coming up that you want to explore. And I think I'll never fully feel like there's nothing to go on to next. At the moment, I work in science communication, but I think next I probably want to get back into conservation maybe, and maybe combine the two. So something that kind of aligns a bit like Arabella's done with science communication and science that I'm passionate about. So that would probably be my next step. And your question about what I would have done if I didn't do science, that's a really great question. If you asked me when I was about your age, Phoebe, I probably would have said probably like become a vet or become a doctor. But now I'm a pretty creative person, and I think I would really love to design and build furniture. So that would be what I would have done if I didn't go into science.
Great, Thanuri, thank you for sharing that. I love it because also it reminds us that there's creativity is a big piece of what we do every day, but we need also this outlet. You never know where you might actually connect to the things that you've almost done. It could be a future connection with everything. You never know, right?
And I would also like to say a lot of the people I work with are quite creative as well as being analytical as scientists. So a lot of us have lots of hobbies, and I think that's something great about being a curious person is you can do so many things.
That's great. Phoebe, I loved the questions. They're so inspiring. I loved that it connected to so many wonderful answers. And Phoebe, I just want to say to you and to all of our Greenlight for Girls that we miss you and that we hope to see you in person as soon as possible. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for being here. And do you have any last things to go before you leave the stage? Do you have any last things to say?
No, nothing else.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having me.
And thank you everyone for being in the audience. We still have a last couple things to do. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually see what's cooking up in our own lab, speaking of Nourish. So we're not only nourishing all of our passions and interests and possibilities for the future, but it's also our curiosity. So I'm super curious because the team always keeps this a secret until I can see it. So let's see.
Hello and welcome to our G4G Atelier. When we think of what it means to feel nourished, we may think of providing what is necessary well-being overall. Food is a crucial part of feeling physically nourished. Our bodies have a fascinating response to pull all the nutrients from the food and engage all of our senses on many different levels. And what about feeding our soul, nourishing our mind, or even nourishing people at a societal level with sustainable thinking and reducing food waste? Today, we are excited to think about how food is different by design and all the different innovative ways we can use it. Our experiments today get us inspired to see how we can understand food in relation to nourishing our bodies, minds, and souls, and all served with a side of science. Are your taste buds ready to experiment? Let's go. Are you curious about edible slime? Well, we added powdered sugar, which has cornstarch in it. When we combined the heated chocolate marshmallow mixture together with the powdered sugar, the starch particles got bigger, and so they have less room to move around. This means our solution becomes thick and more resistant to changing shape, or more viscous. Depending on how much you add, you'll have a certain kind of viscosity and a certain kind of slime. So have fun with it and explore. And don't be afraid to lick your fingers. Wow, we can see that the sparkling water lifts the kernels. That's because the carbon dioxide in the sparkling water surrounds the corn and lifts it as it moves to the top of the jar. When the bubble pops, the corn falls back down, only to be lifted up with the next carbon dioxide bubble, making it look like dancing. It may surprise you that you can make your very own battery using just household materials. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be saved in various forms. One way to store it is in the form of chemical energy in a battery. Batteries are containers that store chemical energy, which when connected to a circuit can be converted to electrical energy, or what we call electricity. They depend on an electrochemical reaction to do this. The reaction typically occurs between two pieces of metal, called electrodes, and a liquid or paste, called an electrolyte. For a battery to work well, the electrodes must be made up of two different types of materials, in our case, the zinc and copper. This ensures one will react differently than the other with the electrolyte, in this case, the lemon juice. Make sure that one end of one clip connects to a cathode of one fruit, a positive end of a battery, for example, the copper coin, and the other end of the clip connects to the anode of another fruit, or negative end of the battery, for example, the galvanized nail. Continue this until all are connected. Once everything is connected, put the last alligator wire clip on the long LED leg, and the other one on the short LED leg. And then ta-da! You just created electricity with fruits. Then have fun exploring which fruit works the best for you.
I always love what's cooking up in the lab, and especially when it's related to food. Chocolate slime, totally inspiring. Something we can do at home. And I know already in our studio audience, there is lots of questions like, hey, where can I get that recipe? Where can I get that experiment? And I want to try out the lemons and I want to try out this. I love the enthusiasm. It's brilliant. Guess what? We're going to be sending it to you for everyone who's here on the studio audience. But also, you can check out Greenlight for Girls on our sites, because you're going to see this again along with all of our inspiring people today. And I'm going to have one last question for all of you, because this is a great place to end this. And that is, I want to ask you about any final words that you have for our young audience today, thinking about your wish for them, any advice, wish for the world, whatever it might be, whatever has nourished the ideas that you have inside you. I'm going to mix it up a bit. Alexandra, you get to go first. What do you have for us?
Wonderful. So I think my wish for the future is that just all young women and girls are inspired to take on a challenge, support each other, have a go, try new things, challenge yourself, and have the confidence that even if it doesn't work out perfectly, it's still lots of fun and you'll do so much better next time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Great words. Arabella, tell us, what are your words?
So my one's got a bit of a story attached to it. And it actually happened to me in year 7. And I'm actually really curious if anyone that in the audience is in year 7. So if you're in year 7, let me know in the chat, because that's exciting. But what happened is in year 7, I actually got the worst grade I think I've ever gotten in my science class. And I was devastated. Like I cannot express how upset I was, because I loved this class. It was absolutely my favorite, but it did not produce the results I wanted. Maybe I didn't study hard enough. I'm not really sure. I was so upset about it, you guys. And then kind of, I worked really hard and I was like, I really care about this subject. I want to do well. And I talked to my mom about it, and she gave me a really good pep talk. She was like, if you care about this, if you're passionate about this, where there's a will, there's a way. So, it doesn't matter if you don't get the best grade in the class. It doesn't matter if you're really upset with how you did, because if you're passionate about this and you care about this, you're gonna find a way to do that thing that you're passionate about. And I definitely think kind of looking back at where I was in year 7 and kind of that mindset of like, oh my gosh, this is my favorite class and I've done really badly. And kind of having that moment and looking back now, I'm like, wow, I really am kind of capable of whatever I put my mind to, because I don't think year 7 Arabella would have ever thought that, you know, she'd be able to publish a paper by the time she was 21, or, you know, get into the university program that I'm into. So I definitely think just going, you know what, if you care about this, you're going to be able to do whatever you want. Just put your mind to it, is definitely the message that I wanted to share today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Arabella. And thank you for also sharing it in context of a story, because I think we've all been there. So it's good to hear as we can relate to it. Thanuri, tell us, what are your words?
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of what Alexandra and Arabella are saying. I would love for anyone watching and for everyone in the audience to know that, like, if you want to be in a science job in the future, if you give it a go and have a go at getting into science, there's lots of pathways into science. You can always start early. You can join up to citizen science groups. You can have a go at anything, do things like this all the time, and you'll build skills that will help you get into science. And even if it takes you a really long time, you can always do it. And I think you just need to be curious and stay positive and have that attitude that Alexandra was talking about, of, you know, giving it a go and not being worried about what people think. But yeah, I just hope that you know that if you really want to be in science, you definitely can be. And we're all evidence of that. All of us have been, you know, we've failed at some points, but we've pushed through, and here we are today, and we're talking to you. So yeah, I hope that you know that you can do it, definitely.
Oh, thank you, all three of you. This is important to do, and I'm so glad you've taken the time to be here, because we do need to hear these words. And I'm especially thinking about everyone who's in our studio audience and live as well. We need to inspire each other, to encourage each other, because that opportunity for thinking about learning and curiosity drives hope, and it drives potential for the future. And I'm so excited to follow the three of you now, because I'm excited about where you go next, and I want to see you again. So let's see if we can make that opportunity happen. So this is the moment where I am going to ask everyone to come on live, but first I need to say goodbye to the live audience that are across 5 platforms. So we'll say goodbye to you and to thank you for being live with us. And for those that are in the studio, I want you to get ready, because I'm going to count it down from 5 to 1. And when I get to 1, I want you to turn on your video, because we want to see all of you, because we're going to do a final wave goodbye. And I know that you're in the audience, but we want to see you on stage. So you get to come on stage with us. So is everyone ready? Get your mouse over the video part and get ready to be on live, because we want to see you.